On December 14, 2025, a press release from the United States Department of the Interior fundamentally altered the status of silver in the global financial system. The announcement, confirmed by the U.S. Geological Survey, officially designated silver as a critical mineral for the first time in modern history. While financial news outlets focused on the immediate price reaction, with silver spot breaching $68 per ounce according to Bloomberg data, defense analysts were focused on something far more profound. This designation is not just a label, it is a legal trigger that activates dormant executive powers. Before we dive into the mechanics of these powers, I need to be clear. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. All opinions shared are my own and based on publicly available information. Please do your own research before making any financial decisions. In this video, we are documenting a shift that moves silver from being merely an industrial commodity or a monetary asset into the realm of national security collateral. We are going to explore the specific legal mechanisms, most notably under the Defense Production Act, that this new status unlocks for the federal government. To understand the implications of this week's news, we need an analytical framework for how governments treat resources during times of stress. Commodity historians and defense analysts often observe what I call the strategic metal intervention cycle. This is a pattern that unfolds when a material transitions from being commercially useful to becoming essential for national survival. The cycle typically has four distinct phases. It begins with recognition of a deficit, moves to official critical designation, escalates to government-incentivized production, and finally, in extreme scenarios, leads to direct government allocation or prioritization of supply. We are not predicting this final stage, but as analysts, we must understand the mechanism that makes it possible. The critical mineral designation is effectively the bridge between phase 2 and 3 of this cycle. It signals to the market that the asset is no longer just subject to free market forces, but also to the requirements of national defense. History provides us with a stark example of this cycle in action, specifically involving silver during a period of intense national crisis. Let's look back to World War II. In 1942, the United States faced a critical shortage of copper, which was essential for shell casings and electrical wiring in military hardware. The solution was found in the West Point Bullion Depository. According to historical archives from the U.S. Treasury, the government didn't just buy silver on the open market, they mobilized their existing monetary stockpiles for industrial defense use. The most famous example was the Manhattan Project. To enrich uranium, massive electromagnets were required, needing thousands of tons of conductive wiring. With copper unavailable, the War Department turned to the Treasury. In what was known as a reverse lend-lease policy, approximately 14,700 tons of silver bullion were drawn from Treasury vaults and fabricated into bus bars and windings for the Calutrons at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. This silver wasn't money in this context. It was a strategic industrial material essential for building the atomic bomb. Documents from the era show that this silver was strictly accounted for and eventually returned to the vaults after the war, but the precedent was established. When national security is on the line, silver becomes a strategic asset first and a monetary asset second. The government demonstrated both the will and the capability to prioritize industrial defense needs over financial holdings. While the 1940s involved direct transfers of government-held bullion, the modern mechanism for intervening in critical supply chains is more sophisticated. It is known as the Defense Production Act of 1950, or DPA. Following this week's USGS designation, silver now falls squarely under the purview of this act. The DPA gives the President broad authority to ensure the domestic industrial base is prepared for national defense emergencies. The most potent aspect of this for silver investors to understand is Title III of the DPA. Title III is not about seizing metal from citizens. It's about controlling the flow of supply and incentivizing production. According to a Congressional Research Service report detailed in 2024, Title III allows the Department of Defense to provide financial incentives such as loans, loan guarantees, direct investments, and purchase commitments to expand productive capacity for critical materials. We saw this used extensively during the pandemic to accelerate vaccine production and more recently to bolster domestic rare earth element processing. But here is the crucial nuance. Title I of the DPA also includes a Priorities and Allocations Authority. This allows the government to require companies to accept and prioritize contracts for materials deemed necessary for national defense over all other commercial contracts. If a major aerospace defense contractor needs silver paste for missile guidance systems and there is a global shortage, a Title I order could theoretically compel a silver refiner to fulfill that defense order before fulfilling orders for jewelry makers, retail bullion dealers, or even investment ETFs. The USGS critical designation is the foundational step that makes these types of DPA actions legally defensible for silver. Now, before we map this onto the current situation, it is vital to consider counter perspectives. Not every analyst believes the DPA will be triggered for silver anytime soon. Some free market economists argue that the current price spikes are sufficient to solve the shortage. They suggest that $68 silver will naturally crush demand in non-essential sectors like silverware and photography, freeing up supply for industrial users without government intervention. Furthermore, mining analysts from major brokerages have noted that while new mines take years to build, current prices will encourage existing mines to lower their cutoff grades and process more ore, gradually increasing supply. There is also the argument that silver's applications are so diverse that a defense emergency is harder to define than it was for something like ventilators in 2020. These are valid points. The market is a powerful mechanism, and government intervention is usually a last resort. We must acknowledge that the designation doesn't guarantee DPA action. It simply enables it. With that context established, let's look at the current landscape through the lens of this strategic metal framework. The USGS decision on December 14th did not happen in a vacuum. It followed data points like the Silver Institute's report on December 12th, confirming a fifth consecutive year of substantial market deficits, projected at 149 million ounces for 2025. The reason silver made the list is its irreplaceable role in future-facing technologies that have both commercial and military dual uses. We are seeing record demand in photovoltaics, which S&P Global reported on December 13th crossed the 200 million ounce threshold this year. But beyond solar panels, silver is critical in advanced electronics, 5G infrastructure, and satellite technology. A 2024 report from Defense News highlighted the growing concern over supply chains for materials used in advanced weaponry, noting that electronic components are the Achilles heel of modern hardware. In a world of rising geopolitical tension, the inability to source high-purity silver for guidance systems, communications gear, or next-generation energy tech is a vulnerability the Pentagon cannot accept. The USGS designation is the formal acknowledgement of that vulnerability. It is the government stating officially that reliance on foreign sources for silver, with production heavily concentrated in Mexico, China, and Peru, poses a risk to the economic and national security of the United States. Analysts examining these precedents have modeled several potential scenarios for how this could play out over the next 12 to 24 months. Again, these are scenarios based on the established framework, not guaranteed predictions. One scenario involves soft intervention using DPA Title III. In this scenario, we might see the Department of Defense announce funding or purchase guarantees for domestic mining projects or recycling facilities in North America. The goal would be to encourage new supply without disrupting the existing market structure. This would likely put a floor under prices, as the government becomes a guaranteed buyer of last resort for new production. A second, more intense scenario involves allocation friction. If the physical shortage becomes acute and defense contractors report inability to source metal, we could see limited use of Title I priority ratings. This wouldn't mean soldiers kicking down doors for coins. It would mean refiners telling commercial clients that their orders are delayed because defense-rated orders must be filled first. This introduces a new variable into the market: political risk to supply availability for non-defense users. The historical timeline for DPA implementation varies, but once a material is designated critical, funding announcements can sometimes follow within a few fiscal quarters if the need is deemed urgent. For those researchers and investors who want to monitor this situation beyond the price charts, the analytical framework needs to shift towards policy indicators. You should be watching the Federal Register for any notices from the Department of Commerce regarding industrial-based surveys related to silver consumers. Keep an eye on press releases from the Department of Defense's Office of Industrial-Based Policy, specifically regarding Title III investment awards. In the past, these awards for things like lithium or cobalt were early indicators of direct government involvement in the supply chain. Watching the actions of major industrial users is also key. If major tech or auto companies start announcing direct-to-mine offtake agreements, it suggests they are trying to secure supply before any potential government prioritization kicks in. To summarize, the inclusion of silver on the critical minerals list by the USGS is a watershed moment. It transitions our understanding of this metal based on a historical pattern of government behavior towards strategic resources. We've seen in cases like World War II that when push comes to shove, strategic needs outweigh monetary considerations. We've explored the legal mechanisms of the Defense Production Act that are now unlocked for silver, ranging from production incentives to supply prioritization. While market forces may yet resolve the deficit, the government has now officially armed itself with the legal tools to intervene if they do not. What is your perspective on this shift in silver's status? Do you believe the government will utilize DPA authority to secure silver supply, or do you think higher prices alone will solve the imbalance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It always helps to see different viewpoints on these complex issues. Thank you for watching and for engaging with this analysis. Stay curious and stay informed.